Uh, did anybody go into the Lazarus story? Did you have time this week to read, and did you see yourself in the story? Did you, were you able to associate with anyone? Do you,
If I associate with anyone, it's probably Mary, because I have belief, but then there's times where I think I'm right on and I'm way off.
Oh.
so when she says, I know I'll see him in the resurrection of the dead, and he's like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm the resurrection. And then it's like, oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, and I'm that guy all the time where I'm like, man, I know this, and I'm 100%, and then I get totally humbled in it, and I go, oh, I didn't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was not in the right place. So I resonate with Mary in that.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I think sometimes I need other people for some reason and to hear their story or see what they've been through, or sometimes I need to see, almost like, Thomas, when he had to see the handprints in Jesus' hand, like, sometimes I have to see things happening. I mean, I'm on track, but then I need that extra boost. So I kind of think, in a way, I'm like that too, like where you know the truth, but then you also need reminded. And Christ is like, when are you going to just stick to it? When are you going to get to that point where you don't need anything else, And so the more and more I see people having hope in him without having, we were talking like about sensual or, conscious versus unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people don't have what certain things we have. We have things that we don't realize are gifts. And then we see other people who don't have those things, and yet they have a greater faith sometimes. And then it turns around and you learn to be thankful. So I've been learning about that this week. But yeah,
Okay.
Mary, I see that.
Okay. I had an experience when I was preaching at the camp. I'm still pastor there, but I haven't been preaching for since Michelle got sick, really sick, and I had to back out. But I remember a young man coming up to us there at the camp and asking for help because his father died, and he said, I need help burying him. And well, we prayed with him, and we were interested in his plight, and we said, sure, we'd like to contribute. And I said, how much do you need, and what's your plans? And he said, well, I've been looking into several burial ways, and he said, I'm figuring we need around 10 grand. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, he says, it's going to cost a good 10 grand, the casket I want and the burial site. And I said, no. I said, there's definitely some ministry that you need to hear, about, did you have a problem with loving Dad? Are you trying to make up some things? Or, what faith are you? Have you been brought up in a system that worships people dying and that kind of thing? And we talked to him a little bit, but he left us. He left the church. He was just there that day. He never attended. He just came to get some money to supplement his vision that he had for Dad. He wasn't interested in the church or attending or hearing the truth. And when we started to talk to him, he went away. He said, I just have to find the money. And so he left. But but it's really interesting, you know, because in this story you have a typical situation with somebody dying following worldly measures. I mean, it's very interesting, you know, how that works, and that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to have Christ go throughout our whole concept, our whole range of concept of what life is. And that's what this story is. This story is about life. And which is why we're going to look at time too, because we mishandle time a lot. It is something that runs our life. We're in this meeting, and we generally have this meeting for an hour, because right around an hour is pretty much, we're at about 90% paying attention, and then we start to wander off, you know. We feel we've paid enough gratitude to God that we spent a whole hour, you know. Everybody has a certain amount of time where you feel that your offering is sufficient, you know. We are the priests, we are the kingdom priests over our being, our body, we offer up for sacrifice. So we have an amount of time that satisfies our conscience. And once we satisfy our conscience, we drift off. So that's why I try to keep it to about an hour, because what I'm trying to reinforce is the aggressive attention to the Word. So I really am careful not to go much beyond that, because I don't want to train people to, you know, to be okay with serving God with mediocrity. Okay? So anyways, I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, so we're in this story in John. We went through the healing at the pool, and which was John chapter 5. We talked about John chapter 6 with the dilemma with the boat. What happened when Christ got in the boat, what changed, what went on in that setting. And today we're going to kind of pay attention to I want to go to between Lazarus and the story in John, between John 11 and John 5 or 6 rather, and compare those two periods, because it's very similar. There's something that we need to take a look at. We studied John 6 and we pressed in class really hard about that gap in perception of the disciples when they went from the middle of the lake to shore without any participation, without any cognizant participation. Okay? So we're going to look at that gap again, and we're going to compare it to the Lazarus story. Okay? because the Lazarus story also has the gap in participation. And it's a very interesting method how God deals with that. So if you guys wouldn't mind, if somebody would read back in John chapter 6, that event from 19, verse 19 of 6 through 21. Verse 19 through 21 of John 6. Let's get that back up on the table so we could take a look at it.
When they had rowed 3 or 3.5 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat walking on the water, and they were terrified. But he said to them, "It is I, don't be afraid." Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the opposite shore of the lake realized that only one boat had been there, and that Jesus had not entered it with his disciples, but that they had gone away alone. Then some boats from Tiberias landed near the place where the people had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. Once the crowd realized that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum in search of Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the lake, they asked him, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" Jesus answered, "I tell you the truth, you are looking for me, not because you saw miraculous signs, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill."
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Marie. Okay, you could see here that there's a view that the people in the story had, where they were just going through things that were normal in their life. You consider it to be normal. This is just the way things go. You have your expectations built on them. You plan consistent with it, okay? And if you get help from anyone, they're going to look for those norms also to set their lives by, to make sure that if they're involved in this plan that you've set up, that the norms are there. Okay? And the world looks for them. It looks for things. If you say something unrealistic, like, well, as soon as your will is consistent with mine, and you come along with me on this trip, we're going to be at the shore 3 miles away in an instant, and you won't remember it happening. What if Christ had revealed his plan with the apostles? What do you think would have been the response? He's crazy.
Maybe they wouldn't believe it.
Huh?
Maybe they wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah. I mean, shock and awe. Like, you know, they already had to row in the dark, you know, a long way from shore after being up all day, and, you know, they were struggling against the sea and they were working hard. You know, then they saw an apparition. I mean, they were getting bombarded, okay? Christ had a phenomenon left that he had plans with them to do, which he did not share. Okay? And there in the story of Lazarus, this is a story of phenomenon also, okay, that Christ and his Father planned but did not disclose. Okay? So keep this story here in your mind and go to Lazarus, John chapter 11, and let's take a look there. Christ alludes to it, but no one pays any attention. Okay? John chapter 11, verse 4. Somebody want to read verse 4 for us?
When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it."
Okay. Along with that, read verse 12. Just keep reading, Marie. Read verse 12 now.
His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better."
Okay. So, what's happening here? Christ is revealing some things to the apostles, but how are the apostles responding to what he's saying? What are they relying on? What are they drawing on in their minds and in their life, their expectancy of the norm? What are they drawing
They're
on?
relying on the corporeal realm. They're saying that if he rests, he'll get better. And Jesus wasn't even talking about resting.
Right.
That's what they're thinking. And they're thinking that's how you get better when you're sick, is you rest.
Exactly. So what you can see here is Christ, unlike the story on the lake, Christ is dribbling out some of the aspects of the reality of life after death. He's dribbling it out to them, little bits, and they're not catching it at all. They're not paying any attention to who's talking to them and who he is. Okay? They're relying on their experience in life, and they're making assumptions that limit what they can possibly believe, like the Mark story, Mark 9 story tells us, everything is possible to him who believes. And Christ told this to the Father in Mark 9. But the Father couldn't conceive of what Christ meant. He couldn't understand it. And it's the same here. Christ is dribbling out information to them. He's letting some insight out that he has, but these men are not assembling it with spiritual minds. They're immediately going to their flesh understanding and applying that knowledge to it. Do you guys see that? Okay, in the story on the lake, Christ did not give them any inclination that they were going to have this gap in their reality experience, and he was going to cause it, and he did not deal with them about it. There was no discussion about it. No one remarked on it. What the resulting experience was for the apostles. It just was a period of time skipped in their lives. Okay? Where do you see that at in the Lazarus story? Does Christ do it again? Does he cause the same experience for somebody in the Lazarus story? He definitely causes it. Who does he cause it to?
The people that were there?
Well, no, the people who were there were all responding from trained social, corporeal, with trained corporeal responses, except for one. Who?
Lazarus?
Lazarus. Except for Lazarus, everyone was plugged in cognizantly, aware, paying attention to time and place and person, and allowing all the norms, corporeal norms, to direct what they thought, except for Lazarus. Okay? So Christ took Lazarus through this experience without recognition of time and place, just like he took the apostles in the boat to shore. It's the same process. You understand that? Do you see that? If he leaves us to ourselves and we do not approach the situation by the opening of our mind,